Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be reviewing our second lesson, which is going to be about rounding. So this should be a shorter lesson than yesterday, so let's get into it. First of all, what is rounding? Well, rounding is when you estimate a number to either the nearest tens, hundreds, or thousands place. You can also round to much higher places, but in third grade, we focus on tens, hundreds, and thousands. So basically what you're trying to do is round it to a number that ends in a 0, okay? Because we're trying to just kind of estimate, and estimate means to guess at the closest number. So down here I have the same number, 2,945, rounded to the tens place would be 2,950. 2,945 rounded to the nearest hundredths place would be 2,900, and 2,945 rounded to the nearest thousands place is 3,000. And if you're sitting there thinking, Miss Weaver, how did you do that so fast? I'm going to show you. So let's talk about rounding to the tens place. Rounding to the tens place is very simple because it starts out by underlining the tens place, we circle the ones place, and we draw an arrow from the ones place to the tens place because the ones place is telling the tens place what to do. Remember our chant, 4 or less, let it rest, 5 or above, give it a shove. That means if the circled number is 4 or less, it's going to let the underlined number rest. If the circled number is 5 or above, it's going to tell the underlined number to shove up to the next number. So here we have a 5 circled, and the 5 is the BFF telling him what to do. The circled number is very bossy and tells the underlined number what to do. So this is a 5, so this is 5 or above, so it's going to tell the 6 to shove up to a 7. And then the number that is circled becomes a 0 because we are rounding to the nearest tens. And if you think about the number 10, it ends in 10. So it would round to 70, okay? Now, let's look at what it looks like to round to the tens place with a 3-digit number. It's the same thing. The only difference is now that we have a 2 in the hundredths place. We're going to get to that, don't worry. Let's underline our tens place still and circle our ones because we're rounding to the tens place. You always underline whatever place you're rounding to. If you're rounding to the hundreds, you underline the hundreds. If you are rounding to the thousands, you underline the thousands. But we are rounding to the tens right now, so we are underlining the tens place. We have a 1 in the tens place and a 4 in the ones place. I circled the BFF, drew an arrow because the 4 is going to tell the 1 to either rest or shove up. Let's think of our chant. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or above, give it a shove. This circled number is 4. So that's 4 or less. We're going to let the 1 rest. So the 1 is going to stay a 1. The 4 is going to change to a 0. And the 2 in the hundredths place just drops down. So our answer is going to be 210. Next, let's look at rounding to the tens place in a 4-digit number. We have 3,008 here. So we're still going to underline the tens place, which is a 0, and then we're going to circle the ones place, which is an 8. And the 8 is going to either tell the 0 to bump up or to rest. So let's think of our chant. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or above, give it a shove. The 8 is 5 or above, so we're going to give the 0 a shove, and that is going to shove up after 0 to a 1. So our 3 and our 0 in the hundreds and thousands place are just going to come over. This 0 is going to bounce up to a 1, and this 8 is going to become a 0. So our rounded number to the closest tens is 3,010. If I'm being honest, I think rounding to the tens can sometimes be the hardest place to round to, especially in these bigger numbers because it gets kind of confusing. So let's talk about rounding to the hundreds next. This is the same idea, except now instead of underlining the tens place, we're underlining the hundreds place. And also when you're rounding to the hundredths place, if you think of the number 100, it has 2 zeros. So all of our answers are going to have at least 2 zeros in them. So the 2 here is telling the 5 to rest or shove up. It's telling it to rest. Good. And remember, we're circling the BFF. The BFF is the number closest to it. So we are circling the tens place here. The 2 tells the 5 to rest. So our closest hundreds here is 500. 521 rounds to 500. Next, what if we are rounding a hundreds place in a 4-digit number? It's the same thing. You underline the hundreds place and circle the BFF. So I underline the 4 because it's in the hundreds place, circle the 5 because it's the BFF, and the 5 is telling the 4 to what? 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or above, give it a shove. That's 5 or above, so we're going to give the 4 a shove. After 4 comes 5. So this 4 is going to change to a 5, and then this 5 is going to change to a 0, and this 6 is going to change to a 0 because we need 2 zeros to round to the hundredths place. And the 4 in the thousands place is just going to pop right on over. So our answer here is 4,500. All right, our last place is rounding to the thousands. This is the easiest one because all of your answers have to have 3 zeros. So really the only thing changing here is your thousands place. So we underline the 7 because it's in the thousands place. We circle the BFF, which is the hundredths, and the 0 is telling the 7 to either rest or shove up. Is 0 4 or less, or is 0 5 or above? 0 is 4 or less, so we're going to let the 7 rest, and it's going to stay 7. So then the 0, the 8, and the 8 are all going to turn to zeros, and it's going to round to 7,000. So it's the easiest one to round to because we're just adding in a bunch of zeros. All right, let's do one more, and then we are done. All right, we underlined the 3 because we're rounding to the thousands place, and we circled the 8 because it's the best friend. The 8 tells the 3 to either bump up or rest. Is 8 4 or less, or is 8 5 or above? 8 is 5 or above, so we're going to give that 3 a shove. What comes after 3? 4. So this rounds to 4,000. Okay, guys, I'm going to warn you about your assignment today. Make sure to read very carefully because if you do not, you might accidentally start rounding things to all the tens or all the hundreds or all the thousands. They're all mixed up in the Google form. So just pay close attention and let me know if you need any help. Good luck, guys. Thanks for watching.